So let's um let's talk about. So here's where I'm at with Russ. I hate Russell Westbrook. Do you like him as a player?
I think it's kind of fake in a lot of ways. It feels like a facade. I respect the fact that he, I know that players love him and teammates love him, so I can't obviously talk about, that because I don't have that experience. But from what I see, he just kind of feels like this player who, yes, he can elevate other guys, but he's really going to want his. And that's okay in the right environment, but not to the detriment of winning. And it just feels like he can't be the guy on your team. And I think that
not if you want to win a championship.
Right. And if we're not contending for a championship, or if that's not the goal, then what are we doing here? Why are we bringing Westbrook in? I understand that you want to change the mindset, and Channing Frye did a great job talking about this on Knicks Fan TV.
Yes, he did.
But it's still, you can find other guys to do that. You don't have to bring in Westbrook on that contract to get that type of, situation done.
So okay, you mentioned Pat Riley. Good old Riles. Heat culture, all the bullshit. It's bullshit upon bullshit upon bullshit, but it's real. There's something down there, right? Just like that there's something in Toronto, there's something in San Antonio, there's something in these organizations that they have gotten it right for long enough where it just there's the good juju. And it makes people want to be a part of it. And even when the chips are down, like Zach Lowe, who we both have a lot of respect for, said 18 months ago, I think, is there any worse situation in the league? Could it be argued that there is that the Heat are the worst situation in the league, right? And they just went to the finals because of all of the bullshit. But it's real bullshit. Okay, the Knicks are as far away from getting to that point as any team in the league. There are some other teams, right? Who, like the Cavs, maybe a few others, but the long and the short of it is the Knicks are a long way away. Russell Westbrook is one of, I don't know how many players when they walk into your building. And again, I say this as someone who hates his game. I hate his attitude. I hate the fact that he gets away with stealing rebounds from players who deserve them more. I hate the fact that he just feels like it's okay to take 5 terrible shots a game, and he knows they're terrible, and everybody knows they're terrible, and yet they're afraid to tell him because he's Russell Westbrook. And oh my God, we have to worship the ground that he walks on as a franchise. I hate all of that about him. But even saying that, I have to admit, the moment he walks into your organization, he is one of 10 to 15 guys in the league, if that, who everybody has to take you seriously because they're there. And I disagree with you in the fact that I don't think there are other ways. The other ways to get that are you become good organically. And really, that's what this discussion is about for me, what is the more likely way for the Knicks to become good? Trying the old-fashioned organic route, which every fan who listens, 90% of fans who listen to this podcast probably want, or go out and get yourself Russ Westbrook, or to a lesser extent, a Chris Paul. That's where I'm at, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. You're not going to find that type of talent on the floor who can bring you what you're talking about.
But it's not just talent. That's
right.
It's talent. It's what it embodies. Attitude. It's all of the persona, right?
It's what he personifies. Of course. Yes. The thing I would argue in that case is, okay, well, look at what the Knicks have brought in. Maybe it's not on the court, but you've brought in respect at the top. It flows through to the bottom. I get it.
The court.
But it trickles down. That's the point.
Does
it's
it?
There.
That's my question. I'm asking.
Well, but the thing is, again, it doesn't have to happen immediately. What you're saying, and granted, I understand it's bringing a guy in the building, your culture changes like that. I get that. But then that's
I can't snap my fingers, by the way.
That's okay. I'll do it for you.
That was really impressive.
There we go. Thank you.
That's good.
One of my few talents. Yes, I get it. If you want to bring someone who has who can change your franchise, the face of your franchise right away, that's the type of move you would make. But again, this isn't something that you solve in a day. This isn't something you solve in a year. And there are other players that you can bring in there that maybe aren't quite as polarizing, but still have had talent in the past, have been in that position where they've been at the top of their games and their games look good. We can get, we will get into this a little bit more. It's tricky. I understand that. I
I
full-heartedly get it. But it doesn't mean that, okay, well, there's one available. And even though he may not fit in the grand scheme of our things, we're changing something right now. You're already trying to change something. You're bringing in other people. And again, the idea is that we don't necessarily know who else is out there that you would want to bring in if you're the Knicks. We know that the NBA has turned a blind eye to tampering. For all we know, the Knicks could have a
Yes.
complete, they could have a player that's under wraps or a deal, something that's there where they say, we know that we can get this guy and he can change the face
Sure.
of the franchise, but not in that way that Russell Westbrook would, where he's, so incredible on and off the court. But again, it doesn't mean that you can't salvage some of that. It just doesn't have to be Russell Westbrook.
So we're gonna agree to disagree on this because I don't name me any player that's potentially available. Gordon Hayward, Victor Oladipo, DeMar DeRozan. I'm just throwing names out there. I don't think the Knicks would actually look at some of these people. Kevin Love. I'm just trying to think of like big names who could potentially even possibly be attained in the next 12 to 18 months. And we've talked about and again with the money. We've sat here and are somewhat in agreement at this point that no one is coming here next year, right?
In terms of free agency?
Yeah.
Sure. But again, you talk about 12 to 18 months, right? A lot can change in an even shorter period of time. I'm not saying in this case it will, but it's the sort of thing where you don't
Yes.
necessarily have to get one of those guys who was top 15, because at this point, I respect what Russell Westbrook was, but I don't care what he was. I care what he is and what he will be. And he's getting paid because of what he was. And that's a
Yes.
problem. And I don't want to deal with that problem.
It's a
I want to
problem
deal
in a
with what
vacuum.
everyone will be. But it's not just in a vacuum, though, because if things go awry, how are you getting out of this? What is your exit strategy? If Russell Westbrook gets hurt, because we know how many knee injuries he's had, and he's had several
Yes.
surgeries, we're looking at a bloated contract where Russell Westbrook's sitting on the bench. And then you could say, well, look at this. I mean, sure, it's great that we're getting these prospects, our odds at a top lottery pick are great, but then you're falling below expectations. See, this is, I think, also a thing that bothers me about the idea of Westbrook is you're raising your floor, and that's fine. You can raise
Yes.
your floor if you want to, but you're also raising expectations. And the last thing that you want to do is fall short on those expectations, because what you're saying to me, not you specifically, but the idea of we want to bring Westbrook in is we want to make a playoff push. And I respect that, because
Yeah.
teams don't necessarily want to lose. Some obviously will prefer to sit this year out, like I'm sure the Thunder, but other teams, it's a little bit different. So if you're trying to make strides to win, and granted, other teams are going to do the same thing. Like the fact is that the Knicks could not get Westbrook, say like the Hornets get Westbrook. The Knicks could add win now veterans to their team, which they probably would do anyway. And there's still
How much
maybe
they'll
not,
help them win is a different
right.
story. But yeah.
But that's the thing. How much better are the Knicks going to be if the other teams around them, like your Hornets, your Bulls, your Hawks,
Yeah.
whatever it is, are also doing better? And if they're, outperforming you as the Knicks, it doesn't mean that you didn't try at all. It just means that they're better. And that's like, for some people, I think that might be a happy medium, which is, okay, well, the Knicks aren't a better team, but they're building in a better way. And
They're
you can see where the growth is going.
They're building in a way that is cleaner, and I think there is the perception that it is more sustainable, and it probably is more sustainable. So because I think that let's assume they don't get. I kind of see. Here's the thing: we could talk about Paul and Westbrook as like being it's the same difference to me. Yes, one theoretically is better at taking young players under his wing and this and that. One is obviously more of an off-ball threat, which is on the floor. That's a big thing. Although I think in the regular season, maybe that doesn't matter as much. Paul is obviously, they both get a lot of assists. They get a lot of assists in different ways, though. One is brute force. One sees plays 3 steps before they happen. So yeah, I'm not saying they're the same player, but like the overall thinking of we are going to bring in this very expensive older guy to change the mindset of our organization and shepherd our young talent, even if it is at the expense of losses and our potential draft pick next year. Same archetype, right? Let's say you disagree?
It's not that I disagree. I don't view them as 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. I think that
Okay,
they're
so
very
it's 5
different.
and 7.
No, but even then, I disagree. I get what you're saying in terms of it's one player versus another player where both players are able to help you. But to me, with Chris Paul, it's more of like a finesse thing, right? It's more cerebral. It's and the contract's a factor too. And
Yes.
I'll be honest about that. The fact that he only has 2 years instead of 3 is huge. And I can't remember who said it in the first place, but if the idea is for the Knicks to get Chris Paul and they're using Russell Westbrook as leverage to say, we'll take on an expensive point guard. We just, Chris Paul's not the only game in town. That I could understand. But I see Westbrook as more of like a run and gun type who acts before he thinks. It's not to say he's not smart, but
Yeah.
you need to build your roster to match up with his skill set.
Which the Knicks don't. Their two best play. Well, Mitch Robinson would fit very well with Russell Westbrook.
Yes, but then you also have RJ, and you're taking the ball out of RJ's hands, and
that's a big thing.
Right, that's
a big
important
difference.
because I also think that Chris Paul can elevate your players to a better place than Russell Westbrook would, and I say that a lot of the advanced stats, especially last year,
not comparable.
Right.
Not even go. If anybody is listening to this, we're not going to spout off the numbers. Go to Clean. Well, I guess you don't have to have a subscription to Cleaning Glass. Russell Westbrook's last 4 years, in terms of his on-court impact, is like the beginning of a roller coaster. It was, I think he was among the top in the league 4 years ago during his MVP season, and then it's fallen off a cliff. It's not good. It's not what you want.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I just feel there is a difference between the two. They're both all-star, one was an MVP, the other obviously wasn't, but it's still, to me, it's how they are growing as they enter the last years of their careers and how they can impact the players around them. And I don't know if we can make the case for Westbrook that he would fit well in an environment where more than half of the team is under the age of 24 years old. And that's important.